Well, hello, and welcome to Wild Vittles. So, this is not going to be a cooking episode. This is not going to be an interview. This is going to be me answering a question, actually. So, Carrie Beeson, who is a podcaster and a guy that I'll kind of call him my podcast mentor, because when I thought about doing a podcast, I knew that he'd started one, and I kind of asked him how and background and got some input from him. Carrie had asked me a question, actually, and he thought it would be interesting for me to talk about why did I cook with cast iron. And he said he's asking for a friend. And Carrie, if you're listening, you might think that, I ignored you. I did not ignore you. I am just slow. It's been in the hopper, and I think now is the time. So most of these episodes, I may put together an outline. I do have an outline, but I kind of wing it. So I may bounce around. But what I wanted to talk a little bit about is cooking with cast iron. Why do I do it? Why do I think it's a good pan, a good vessel to be able to cook stuff in? And then how you take care of it. I think that's some of the things, some of the barriers that keep people from using it is the fear of not knowing how to take care of it. And there's going to be an issue essentially. So, I started using cast iron probably, I'm guessing, because I don't remember exactly, probably, I'm going to say 6 or 7 years ago. Up until that point, I hadn't, because I have a glass range, and I always felt like you're supposed to have a gas range to be able to use cast iron. I had used like a cast iron Dutch oven for camping. I've used, pans like that for camping, but never in my own home. And I got the itch to do it, 6 or 7 years ago. And, one of the things that I was trying to get away from was I'm uncomfortable with a lot of the non-stick pans, especially Teflon. I don't like the fact that if you use a steel pan with a coating, that you can't use, you have to be careful about what you put in there and then scratching it. And I'm a germphobe and kind of a hypochondriac anyway, so that's just not a good combination. And I've always felt like I like to do things kind of a more traditional way, and I like to use a kind of traditional equipment. I like to shoot archery. I even like to shoot traditional archery, although often I'm using compound bows when I'm going out of state, but I do shoot traditional equipment. So what I use is a cast iron pan, and I have several of these. I have I forget the measurements exactly. If this is probably a 10-inch. I have a 14. And then I think I have an 8, and I have several of them. They're not very expensive. I mean, you can spend a lot of money if you want to on one, but they are extremely resilient. I think, this is a Lodge, and this might cost $30. These other pans are actually from my grocery store, H-E-B. They have their own brand of cast iron. I think it's Casa something. It says on here. Now I want to know. So let me see. Cocinaware, which I've read that is actually may come out of Venezuela by another company that's making it on their behalf. I would rather it be American made. Lodge is American made. Some people get really into this and want to get some original, Griswolds and some of the others, from back in the day that aren't made anymore. There are high-end ones, Smithyware, Stargazer. There's a few others. Some of them are terribly expensive, like $200 to $500 pans. But I like them. So why do I like them? I like them because they, first of all, they're extremely durable. I use it on the range. I can use it in the oven. I can use it on my grill. And all you need, because I don't have like a handle is just metal, so I use a cover, one of those like pot holder looking things. I'll put that over the end. You can't leave that obviously in the oven or on the grill, so you kind of pull it off, put it back on. But they're virtually indestructible. You can use them on any surface. You can use them on glass. I thought like I was going to break my glass top or that it was rough and it was going to scratch it. Not true. So I had done some research and then tried. I got one pan. I think I got the smaller cocina-ware pan from the HEB and tried it out, and I was like, I really like this. I've kind of learned on my own on how to clean it and how to season it. They come pre-seasoned. I mean, when you buy one, they're already black, obviously, because if they didn't have any seasoning, they would be silverish, because they're iron, cast iron, obviously. This black coating is a kind of a seasoning. When you get one, they're ready to go. Cleaning them, I've never used soap, ever, never. I do clean it. My cleaning agent is cheap salt. So I go down to the grocery store. Mine is HEB. And I spend 64 cents is what it used to be. It may be higher now. On a thing of salt and hot water and a paper towel. And essentially I put that salt in there and with a paper towel and a little bit of water, use the salt as an abrasive. And if there's anything really stubborn, then I'll use one of these Lodge. I'm holding up a Lodge. I don't know what you call it, a scraper. It's kind of a hard plastic scraper that you can use. It's kind of multi-shaped, so you can get into the corners and the round edges. And if you have anything really stuck on the bottom of the pan, you can scrape it up. Often I'll put hot water in it. If it's really stubborn, you can put a little water in it and heat it up on the range, and then stuff will break loose. Heat and water are wonders. If you're like, dude, I need something a little bit tougher, they do make these. I'm holding up it's kind of a rubber, what would you call this thing? It's a square rubber thing. Around it is some chainmail, and you can use that also to scrub. So obviously you don't have to baby these things at all. And then if, God forbid, for some reason that you accidentally got some rust on one because you let it get wet, I've got one of these Lodge erasers. It's kind of a black rubber stick that says Lodge on it. And I've tried this out. You actually rub this like an eraser on wherever there's rust, and it kind of grinds it off. Now you need to wash it after that, and I would do it with salt and water. You don't have to use soap. And it will remove any rust that you have on there as well. Periodically I do season my pans. If you have one and it's not, it's sticking quite a bit, you can season it by taking pretty much any kind of oil, but like avocado oil, canola oil, grapeseed oil, anything with a relatively high smoke point. You put a thin covering all over the pan, and then you can put it into your oven, I believe at 450. And you'd want to do it upside down, put a cookie sheet underneath it in case it drips any, and put it in there. I forget how long you put it in there exactly, maybe 30 minutes or so. Essentially, you're just baking on that oil. Another way to do it, like every time that I use my, not every time I guess, but every time that I use my pans, I'll clean them using salt, and then I'll dry them. Sometimes I'll dry them by putting them on the range and just, turning the burner on to let them heat up. And if they look kind of dry, I'll take a paper towel and put a little bit of oil on it, canola oil, grapeseed oil, whatever the case may be. And I'll put like a thin layer in the bottom. And I'll let that heat again, and that kind of bakes in and polymerizes that layer. If you ever have the occasion to fry something, fry it in your cast iron, because that is also putting seasoning in there and will kind of bond that oil into your cast iron, because it's a porous surface. And another reason I'm against like Teflon and other non-stick type materials, because God knows what's in those. Cast iron, actually iron is good for you. I was reading and watching a video on user-centered design for a project at work, actually. And there's this thing called a lucky fish, and it's an iron fish. And I think they were somewhere in Southeast Asia, and they were trying to help people. There's a high level of anemia there, being low iron, and people cook in aluminum pots and pans, and they were trying to get them to cook in iron, like this, cast iron. And they wouldn't do it because it was too heavy to carry around. So they actually gave them pieces of iron to put into their pots, and that would impart iron to help you not be anemic. Funny story, people didn't put it in their pots because they're like, what am I going to do with this square piece of iron? It didn't look like something that I should put into my food. So instead, they made it look like a fish. And in that culture, fish are lucky. And so they would hand it to him and say, this is your lucky fish. It will help you with anemia. Put it into your pot when you're cooking your food. And so people actually started doing it, and then rates of being anemic went way down. Well, we're not going to have that trouble because we're eating healthy wild game meat full of iron, I'm sure, and you're eating it out of a cast iron pan. So I think cleaning, you can put soap on it. I just wouldn't do it very often. Oil them periodically. Make sure they're dry. When you don't have to clean it right away. I'm really procrastinate something awful. And often I'll cook and then I'll be busy and then I won't actually clean my pan until the next day. It's perfectly fine as long as it's oil. Just don't let it be wet. If you're camping, for God's sake, don't leave it out because the dew or whatever in the mornings will rust their pan. I don't know what the difference is of being outside or inside, but it will rust like a son of a gun. Let me check my notes here. How to care for them. Oh, yeah. I think, the biggest things here are really salt. Get yourself, if you get a cast iron pan, start with a cheap one. Get yourself like an 8, 10, or 12. They'll come seasoned already. Get some salt and some paper towels to be able to kind of clean it up. Get yourself some oil and put a very thin layer on it and then heat it up and you're good to go. If it gets sticky, you've put too much oil on it, and use them, and they can double as a weapon in case somebody comes into your house. I mean, these son of a guns are heavy, and they hold heat great, and they're great to cook with. I've got 4 pans. I've got 3 enamel coated Dutch oven cast irons, and 1 normal camping Dutch oven. The enamel's pretty handy because of the tight-fitting lid. You need a tight-fitting lid, and the enamel helps you cook things that are acidic. You can cook, like I like to cook a lot of things with tomatoes in them. You can cook acidic things in a cast iron pan, but you wouldn't want to do it all the time. And you'd want to make sure that you have a good level of seasoning on your pan. So, just think about that. If you're putting, like, let's say you're cooking spaghetti sauce for whatever reason in it, don't do it every day, weeks on end. You'll notice that it's going to eat away at your seasoning. So just know you're going to have to kind of balance, and you need to take care of it. So it's kind of like a relationship. You need to give a little love, and in return, it will give back to you as well. Lots of service, but there's they're great. They're great things. I really enjoy them. I'm not compelled to buy the fancy ones. I don't know, other than looking cool, I don't know that they do anything more differently. I don't know that they do anything better. If you disagree with me, message me. Get on my Instagram and get in my DMs at Wild Vittles Podcast and tell me the error of my ways, and I will be happy to listen. But right now I'm pretty happy with my $30 pans, $20 and $30 pans. I do like I said, American made, although my stuff from the H-E-B is not. It's in the Americas. But they're fantastic, and I have no desire to ever go back to a flimsy pan or pot of any other kind. The only exception might be for a wok. I am thinking about getting a carbon steel wok. That's kind of a unique case because it has to be so hot. So I think that's it. This is going to be a short and sweet episode. I want to be responsive. If you have any other questions, would look forward to hearing from you in my Instagram. Again, Wild Vittles Podcast. If you have on YouTube as well, of course, the comments there. You have any requests on maybe what kind of foods to cook, or anybody you want me to interview? I do have some interviews coming up. I'm hoping that you're enjoying kind of the swapping back and forth between cooking episodes and interviews. And I may do more kind of these topical discussions. This one was, I'm trying to be responsive. Kerry asked a question, and it's been on my mind. I want to get back to him. And hopefully I've addressed kind of the key things, but I would just say jump in. I didn't have them all figured out. YouTube is a wonderful thing, and you can really. I think the thing about it is that they're not very delicate, right? And as long as you could only ruin one if you set it like got it wet and put it in your backyard and let it lay out. That'll ruin it. But other than that, you're not going to hurt this thing. They are extremely durable. They heat up well. They hold heat. They're substantial. I like substantial things. So I guess that'll be it for this week's episode. I really appreciate everybody that's tuning in via either the audio podcast or on the YouTube. And go out to Instagram and have a gander there. I really do appreciate everybody that has been following, and it kind of all fits together in a multimedia type interface. So thank you. I hope that you'll use some cast iron in your wild game cooking. And until next time, good night and good luck. Thank you.